Now, rough waters have begun to rock the boat of the Tinubu administration before it even sets sail. In his inaugural speech last week, President Tinubu confirmed the removal of subsidies on fuel. Although this already existed by law, Tinubu's announcement had a cascading effect on the country. Firstly, petrol prices went up from under 200 naira, now selling between 488 naira to over 500 naira, much to the ire of the consuming public. Following this was labor union action. They too have been up in arms and making demands on the federal government to reverse pump prices, the absence of which the National Labour Congress is threatening to lay down its tools on Wednesday, June 7th. Now, ever since the Congress's announcement of the strike action, other unions like the Trades Union Congress, the National Union of Electricity Employees, and the National Union of Journalists have lent support to the action and will also embark on strike beginning Wednesday. Now, that's what's up for discussion today on The Square. I am Kemini Amano, and you're most welcome. Joining our gathering right now is Dr. Abiodun Buhari, who is a political analyst. A little later on the conversation, we'll hear from the NLC and the NUJ. Well, my understanding is the NLC is joining us over the telephone, and so over the phone we have Olabisi Adebayo Idowu. Well, my understanding is we do not have Olabisi. We rather have Chris Isiguzo, who is the national president of the Nigeria Union of Journalists. Gentlemen, you're welcome to The Square.
Good afternoon.
Indeed. And I want to, absolutely. I really do want to start with you, Chris. If you do embark on strike on Wednesday, who's going to cover the news of those who are on strike? Just quickly tell us why you want to go on strike.
Well, thanks again for having me. One thing we must know is that the Nigeria Union of Journalists is an affiliate of the Nigeria Labour Congress. As a trade union, even though we enjoy dual status, as a trade union and, of course, a professional body. But from the first leg of our existence, which is the fact that we're a trade union, we are under the authority of the Nigeria Labour Congress, which is the central labor union in the country. And as such, the NLC, at its Emergency National Executive Council meeting, resolved that all affiliates under the Central Labour Organization, the Nigeria Labour Congress, should embark on industrial action, of course, to protest against the removal of fuel subsidy. In line with that, the Central Working Committee of the Nigeria Union of Journalists equally convened an emergency meeting where it was resolved that the NUJ, as an affiliate of Nigeria Labour Congress, should equally embark on industrial action as declared by the Central Labour Organization. So, on that score, we are aligning ourselves with the NLC.
Indeed.
And it is expected that journalists across the country should down to in compliance with the directive from the NLC.
Very well. There are a few things that I want to take up with you just before I move on to Dr. Buhari. Chris, talk to us about how the NUJ feels about the NLC snubbing the Sunday meeting with federal government on the basis that they would want to meet representatives of the government.
I didn't get that question, please.
Well, I'm asking you about what the NUJ thinks about the NLC snubbing a meeting with the federal government.
Well, we expect that our Central Labour Organization, the Nigeria Labour Congress, should be open to conversation with the federal government. However, I recall during the last interface with the government, the leadership had expressed reservation, looking at it from the perspective that they were negotiating from the point of weakness, because the NNPC Limited had announced a new price regime even before the conversation. The leadership of NLC had made it very clear that they are not going to have a conversation where they were going to discuss from the point of weakness. That for them to have a conversation with the federal government, that there must be a return to status quo antebellum, which is return to the last known pump price of fuel. And until that is done, they were not going to have conversation. But I want to use this opportunity to also make an appeal to the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Council. Nigerians are already experiencing a biting economic hardship, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. And as such, compounding their woe may not be in the overall interest of Nigeria and Nigeria. There is need for them to resume conversation, discussion with the federal government, having high level of optimism. Let us not just conclude that nothing is going to come out of it. Let's have a conversation. Very well. See what brings to the table.
Indeed, Chris, I'm going to come back to you, and then we'll talk a bit more about that. But let's take that conversation to Dr. Buhari now. Doc, you've had the concerns of these labor unions. You've also had what moves that the federal government has decided to put in place. A test for the Tinubu administration. What's your reading into this?
Well, definitely it's unfortunate in Nigeria that our leaders are not learning from the other country in the world. Because when you're having any principle that you are thinking of bringing in, there should be a pre-plan at which all stakeholders concerned are going to be in the table, and you are going to fashion it out. You cannot remove subsidy, because when you look at Nigerian situation, apart from other sector, the labor sector, including federal, state, private sector, there must be a proper planning at which the effect will be pushing. For example, the transportation, they will just hold the meeting. How to create the palliative within themselves is not the problem. The transport of 10 naira can be increased to 100 naira. But all these stakeholders are supposed to be in table before you are going to make this pronouncement. I think there's no proper planning. Even if the subsidy removal is due, the way the president announced it, I don't think it's the best way of doing it without carrying along all the stakeholders. That's my own perspective about
absolutely, and that's where I want to take you on from. The removal of the subsidy has been in the making since 2021 based on the Petroleum Industrial Act. And so if there were some negotiations to be done, if there were some table talks to be done, shouldn't it have been done within that period when the administration that had put it in place was still there in government, rather than take it on the Tinubu administration that only confirmed it?
Well, you see, if the government are so sincere, the Tinubu administration does not just come up last week. It came up immediately, set up transition committee. During this transition process, they will have bring in all stakeholders, the union representative, the transporters, everybody to come up. Because the problem we are having presently is that you said you want to remove the subsidy. Fine. The money that you want to save from that place, where are you spending it? Nobody knew. But nobody has the figure about what is exactly the subsidy figure. Nobody is having information, because just one day you wake up and you just discover that the price just skyrocketed. If the government has the will to remove this subsidy, all the stakeholders involved, to me personally, is due for removal because there are trillions of naira that can be used. It is because the situation we find ourselves in Nigeria. We shouldn't even know the cost of fueling. The cost of transportation should be our problem. Before I get to work today, I shouldn't be thinking of driving my car.
Right.
I'm supposed to even just join a bus. So
Very well.
what I'm saying in essence, yes.
Very well.
What I'm saying in essence is that
right, you go ahead. Finish that point.
Yes, what I'm saying in essence is that we have to go back to roundtable. The time is still there. I learned that the subsidy payment covered this month, the June that we are speaking. So within 2-3 weeks, this thing can be fashioned out. What the labor union are saying is not that they should not remove the subsidy.
So how about we hear from Doc, let's hear from the labor union. I see that Olabisi Adebayo Idowu, the vice chairman for NLC Lagos State Council, has joined our conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Olabisi. Olabisi, if you can hear me, you joined at a very fine time. We've been talking about the timing of this. So 2 things I want you to tackle for us. Did you have any engagement with the Buhari administration regarding the removal of fuel subsidies that had been scheduled for June this year? Did you have any engagements with the government? And I mean, there are those who have argued that this is just to stronger arm the Tinubu administration to do what Labor wants. What's your reaction to that? These 2 things, quickly, on timing.
Can you quickly repeat the question?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So I'm asking, questions about the timing of this call for strike have been raised, and, especially because we have known that the removal of subsidy had been in the making under the Buhari administration. My question to you is, has the NLC had any engagement with the Buhari administration regarding the removal of subsidies then, when we knew that it was coming up in June?
Well, thank you very much. Very simple. Let us be sincere with ourselves. Natural science, I don't know where they call subsidy. It's a scam. It's a scam. If you listen to Kiari, he said he paid 2.8 trillion to who? On what? You see, before anybody talk about this subsidy, and what we are saying from our own end, what we are saying, let the stakeholders be on the round table and come back to the status quo. Let them come back to the status quo. The price, the PM, let them bring back to the status quo. When they bring back to the status quo, that's the time we can discuss. Now, if the federal government are sincere, the information on ground known to all Nigerians was that this thing will be removed by the end of this month, 30. Then what happened? Even if the president made the pronouncement that this and that, have you finished June? And what do I mean? If the federal government are sincere enough, when the other side, either they call them market or whatever they call them, if they do otherwise, the federal government has the authority to stop them. And that's where the NLC stands. Let us come back to the status quo so that we can discuss this issue. We have been trying to engage, as regard your question, we have been trying to engage the previous administration silently because we don't want anybody to tag us as a saboteur. It was based on that we have been working on that so that we let everything be the way Nigeria wants it. But the federal government, they are not sincere. Because if you said this thing will round up by 30 or 31st of June, have you completed June? If some group now come up with a price just like that, 500 naira, 600 naira, and the federal government are looking at them, that's where we are, what we are talking about. Let everybody come back to the status quo. All the stakeholders should come to the round table and discuss. Let me give you this. If you want to kill a snake in a bush or in a dangerous place, what you need to do is to clear the surroundings so that you will know where the snake will pass through so that you can kill it. What they are trying now, they are not sincere.
So, Olabisi, again, to clarify the point, you're saying that the NLC is not against the subsidy. However, the NLC is against the subsidy now, and that, the NNPC should wait until the end of June. My question then is, what difference will that make? Because the prices will still go up. So what exactly is the problem now?
Get me clear. What I'm saying in essence is this. We are saying all the stakeholders must discuss this. And they want us to discuss it. The pump price will come back to the status quo. That's the time we can discuss it. If the federal, listen to me very well. I said it ab initio. Sincerity of purpose is very, very paramount this time around. If the federal government are sincere that this thing they are talking about, the subsidies count they are talking about, because we don't know. Nobody has ever discussed the analysis and the component that leads to this subsidy we are talking about. How much was involved? How did they arrive at that amount of money? What's the cost landing from overseas? Nobody has ever come on board to discuss it. That's what we are saying. Let everybody, the stakeholder, come on the round table. Let them play this before everybody. We will not discuss it. Now you move from something from 180, 182 to 488, 500, and you are now saying we should come and sit down. Sit down on what? Which analysis you want to use? Which parameter you want to use to measure the issue on ground now? You can see the pains all over the Nigerians. Move around, you see them, you see their faces very hard, very strong. People are not happy. People cannot go to work now because everything has increased in three ways, 4 ways, 5 ways. In fact, too much. People are crying, people are lamenting. Seriously, let us be sincere with ourselves. What's subsidy?
Very well.
Who defines subsidy?
Olabisi, I'm going to come back to you. I will come back to you in a bit, but let's move on to Chris, who is still over the phone. Chris, and so if the concern for labor is to engage, the federal government, this government only came into office last week. It has barely named who is a part of the administration. How would you meet somebody in the administration to have a conversation with if you didn't even give them time to settle, Chris? Did it occur to labor?
Well, thank you again. When you talk about giving a new administration opportunity to settle down, you would equally agree with me, it is the same administration that made a pronouncement that the subsidy regime is gone. And I want to believe that before the pronouncement was made, Mr. President must have had a detailed analysis of the whole thing. So what we are talking about is that you cannot announce an end to a subsidy regime when the 2023 Appropriation Act still makes provision for subsidy till 30th of June 2023. What it means is that the petroleum products that we are going to use for this month has been subsidized. Mm-hmm. But as we speak, we are paying about 540 naira. For instance, I bought at that price, 540 naira per liter, against what we are buying, about 195. Now, what are we now trying to do? A product has been subsidized for the period of 30 days, but Nigerians, consumers, are made to still pay. That is like killing an ant with a sledgehammer. That's high. And it's unacceptable to the organized labor. Then if the government had allowed a discussion for this period of 30 days before 30th of June, it would have been a lot better. It's a long period for a conversation, for a dialogue, for a discussion, for an interface to take place. But government did not give that opportunity, but rather clearly violated the provision of 2023 Appropriation Act by removing subsidy that has been paid for, that has been budgeted for the period under review. It is in itself not in tandem with the spirit of rule of law. And that's exactly what the organized labor is saying. Nobody is opposed to removal of subsidy. I want you to understand it clearly. And if you had looked at our statement from the angle of the Nigeria Union of Journalists, we are not opposed to it. Nobody is opposed to it.
Absolutely.
But what we are talking about is the process, the procedure we must have to respect the existing law, which is the Appropriation Act that has already budgeted for it for June 30. That's what we're talking about.
Very well. So then, my understanding then again is that beyond that, you still want the government to intervene in such a way that it will mitigate the impact on the Nigerian people, on labor. And that brings me to you, Olabisi. Olabisi, if you want to talk to government, why haven't you attended their last meeting? Or why didn't you attend the last meeting? Olabisi, we can't hear you. If you can hear us.
I can't hear you. I think you come up again.
Absolutely. I was saying that I hear both of you clearly, and I totally understand that your issue has to do with the timing of the announcement of the removal of subsidy. But I'm also saying that beyond that, Labour is asking that efforts be put in place to mitigate the impact on the Nigerian people and on labor, that is to say. So my question is, if you really do want to talk to find a solution to this problem, why were you not at the last meeting?
Thank you very much. We have said something. The Central Working Committee have placed their demand, and we still remain resolute on that. What we are saying is this. If we want to discuss an issue, we should not start from the up. We start from the ground, then start moving. Let us come back to the status quo. That's what we are saying. They should reverse the price. Because what are we discussing about? When we are discussing now, we are discussing on the issue of 400, 500, 600. What led to the issue of 182? We have never discussed that one. We are not discussing the issue of 450, 488, 670, 1,000. We have to know the parameter they use to arrive at the level of 182. We have been trying to caution ourselves ever before this, so that they will not look at us as a saboteur. So that we have been trying to play our role as a stakeholder to make sure everybody, all Nigerians, enjoy this, our country. That's what we have been doing. If they are sincere, I will continue to say this. If they are sincere enough, before the pronouncement, all the stakeholders must meet with the government and we'll discuss, we'll look at it so that all of us can be on the same page. They can tell us the statistics analysis that led to the price we are using now. And I've said it before. Why?
Very well.
Why?
I see. When we come back from this break, I want us to, and Doc, this is for you, I want us to roll back a few years and see what happened during that period when there were similar, attempts to remove subsidies. You're here on The Square. I'll be right back. Welcome back to Village Square Africa. We are still on the matter of the removal of fuel subsidies in Nigeria and the impact it's having on labor. We know that labor is calling for strike action across the country starting Wednesday, June 7th. But so far, we know that the government has met a section of labor and some things have come out of that. Let's discuss that and the way forward for the country and the Tinubu administration that is. Still with me, Dr. Abiodun Buhari. He's a political analyst. Over the phone is Chris Isiguzo, who is national president of the Nigerian Union of Journalists. And we also have on Zoom Olabisi Adebayo Idowu, who is vice chairman for the NLC, Lagos State Council. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience. I come to you, Doc, now. I've kept you quiet for a bit. But you can tell the stalemate here. Between labor, particularly the NLC, and all its affiliates, and then the federal government on one hand. How do you want or how do you expect the federal government to proceed on this?
Well, firstly, if federal government want to be sincere, they have to revert back to status quo because they were not carried along in the first system. They will now sit down and look at it. We need some statistics for us to, because to me personally and to the belief of Nigerians, I think subsidy is a scam. Even this parent government in 2015, part of their campaign was that present government, that there was nothing like subsidy, that is a scam. How many liters are we consuming? What bring about this price? The 500, 540, 488. What are the parameters that led to that? Is it cost of transport from one port to another? Is it the landing cost? You can't just give somebody price without justification. So I think federal government have to treat this with every sincerity. So they have to tell us, especially the union, they have to tell them, okay, this is IC. By the time the facts and figures are available, the two of them, both government and union, they can now come into a compromise and look at what is the best way of solving this problem. The problem cannot be solved alone by government, except there is something they are hiding somewhere. I think that is my belief.
I see.
Or they don't want us to know something.
Doc, is it within the power of the government to now tell the NNPC, which is a limited liability company, you know, to do what labor is asking? Is it within the power of government?
It's obvious to every one of us that the fuel that we are using presently, based on what, except they have told us a lie, until June ending, they've paid the subsidy this fuel. So they can refer back to status quo, and within 2-3 weeks, they can sort the problem out. They can put them, as you are sitting down there, if your boss give you an assignment that social services should be provided, which are within your purview, you will provide it. Why are they running away? They know the number of barrels they are importing. They know the approval, the license they are giving. So they should avail us that. So they should avail the union that, so that they will come to round table. If not, the only best language that Nigeria government understood is strike. So there's no solution to it.
I see.
Except they are going to be sincere.
Let me take this to Chris now. Chris, is it to your belief that, you know, the federal government can really do something about the NNPC prices without meddling in the affairs of a limited liability company?
Thank you very much. The fact still remains that NNPC has become a limited liability company. And if you have said that you have deregulated the oil sector, you have no business meddling into fixing of prices for the same product. You know, that in itself is also a different issue to be discussed. But at this moment, we have an urgent issue that we must clear. One, there is a subsisting subsidy regime. And there is no way you are going to still charge the people, even when you have already subsidized the product in question. That is one issue. Now, before you think of removing subsidies, you must have established structures, put structures in place that will help cushion the impact, the effect of removing the subsidy. These are the issues we are talking about. Now, like I said earlier on, I bought the product at 540 naira per liter. And to fill my tank, we're talking about close to 50,000. And we are running an economy that the minimum wage is 30,000. Even at that, most state governments are not even implementing the 30,000 naira minimum wage, policy. Now you are going to fill your tank at about 50,000, depending on the make of the car or the size of your tank. That means your minimum wage is not even enough to take care of that. That's why we felt that there is need for government to also look at the effect, the impact of such removal. That's what we are talking about. Nobody is opposed to it, and government must have to do the needful. Once this is done, that's why we have 1 month from May 29 to June 30. We'll be talking about a month, and it would have been enough to sort out these issues and now have something that is working for Nigerian people. Instead of just announcing a removal, you have indirectly enriched some of these marketers. A product has been subsidized, and you are forcing Nigerians to pay even when the product has been paid for. That in itself is not the right thing. It's an aberration. And that's what we're talking about.
Brings me to you. We know that the meeting that the NLC shunned did take place after all on Sunday, and spokesperson for the federal government, Dele Alake, had mentioned that the government was looking into forming a tripartite committee to look into this matter. Is that good enough for the NLC?
Hello?
Olabisi, can you hear me? Olabisi, can you hear me?
No, not at all.
I'm going to give it, that's no problem. I'll ask the question again. I'm saying that the federal government, we know, after the Sunday meeting, has said that they will form a tripartite committee to look into the matters raised by labor. Is that good enough for the NLC?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The government, the federal government has plans to form a tripartite committee to look into the demands of labor. Is that a good start? Olabisi can't hear me, and so I'll move the question to Chris. Chris, is that a good start for you? Oh, you didn't hear me too. I apologize, gentlemen. I have no idea what's wrong with the audio, but I'll give it one last shot. For both you and Olabisi, the federal government says it would look into this matter, but first it will form its tripartite committee to look at it. What does this mean for, to labor? What does this mean to labor? I'll start with you, Olabisi.
Well, we have heard all this. We have had this in time past. What we're talking about is a return to status quo antebellum. Now there can be conversation. You don't go into a conversation as the weak party. A new price regime has been announced, and you are not going into conversation. It doesn't really make any meaning. Now, revert to where we were. Then we can come to the roundtable discussion. You place what you have. Before labor were not masquerade that you cannot have engaged in a conversation. Put it on the table, and we weigh the pros and the cons. Cross the T's and dot the I's properly, and see what is possible, what is feasible at this material point in time. But first of all, there's no way you continue to impoverish, so to speak, Nigerians by making them to pay for something that has been subsidized. That is it. If this announcement had come around June 30 and you say there is no appropriation, then it's a different kind of conversation. But at the moment, these products have been subsidized. Let us at least allow Nigerians to enjoy for the remaining 30 days. Then we can engage in other forms of conversation. So the tripartite committee you are talking about, there is also nothing wrong with it. But first of all, let's do the needful. You don't place the cat before the horse.
So Chris, it's reversal or nothing. That's my understanding from you. But again, as labor is well aware, this is a legal matter. If you say the NNPC should have waited for June to expire before taking up, the removal of subsidy, then why don't you go to court and have your matters heard? Olabisi, is this something that labor is considering?
Well, thank you very much. You see, the discussion still based on the same issue, only one item, and that's the scams subsidy. And if truly, we don't need to go to court, if truly there are something of such nature, there won't be any need, as regard any pronouncement, that such a thing has been removed, whereas it will end by the end of this month. And based on that, because of that announcement, the price was increased in triple way. Sir, madam, can you tell me the analysis? Is there any sincerity?
I understand your sentiment. What I'm saying is that if you think that the law has been broken, obviously, just 1 second, so you understand my question. If you believe that the law has been broken, there is a place you go when you think the law has been broken to seek redress. One of those places is the courts. Why is labor holding the entire country to ransom instead of just going to court?
In the labor system, everything has procedures. The first stage, second stage, third stage, and so on. We have just begun. If they are sincere, our doors open for compensation. If they are ready to serve Nigerians and they don't have any hidden agenda, our door is open for dialogue.
I respect that.
If they believe they are here to serve all of us as a servant, we are ready to dialogue.
Fair enough.
What we are saying and continue to say, they must come back to status quo.
Absolutely.
That's only where we can see the analysis.
Indeed. Now, I want to move on to Doc now. Doc, perhaps you have the last word on this one. One of the things that we hear Labour talking about is you should have waited until the end of June, after which you should put in efforts to mitigate this. We know that President Tinubu, at the time in the position in 2012, had made the same sentiments when the Jonathan administration was removing fuel subsidy. Do you expect the president to take his own advice, first of all, of phasing out fuel subsidies, and then secondly, putting in plans to mitigate the impact on the Nigerian people? Dr. Buhari.
Yes, that is the proper way of doing it. As I said earlier, the government approach is the major problem. I could see that you are saying that we know certain things that cannot work in Nigeria because the masses will suffer. The best thing is that they should look at what are the palliative means, because the effect of removal of subsidy will create some hardship to Nigerians, to all of us, not any class, except those high-class people. So what are the way of pushing the effect? This money that, we are removing, are we expending it on the road or electricity? For example, if there is stable electricity, the number of diesel you consume in your station will be reduced. So the rate of consumption of that fuel, in fact, it will be very, very reduced to a certain level. There's no plan to that. And that is why everybody are frustrated, not only labor. Even if labor is quiet, you will see people that they will want to go on street by themselves, because it's not easy, my dear sister, to every one of us. There's no that palliative in place to pushing that effect. So government should, if they truly want to remove it, they want to go with that regime, which is due. They must put in place necessary measures to pushing the effect.
Very well, gentlemen, great conversation, but that's all we have time for, and we'll end our conversation here. Thank you so much, Olabisi, Chris, and Dr. Buhari. I appreciate your insight and your time on the subject matter. Now, for you at home, don't be mistaken. When Labour decides to go on the strike, it would affect you, it would affect me, and if they do get their way, it will also impact us positively. We'll keep an eye on this story as it unfolds here in Nigeria and inform you about it. In the meantime, I'll see you tomorrow. That'll be all on the show. Bye-bye.